Yes, so we are on air. Good morning, everybody. So this is Agile Mondays. Thank you for joining us and welcome. My name is Elena Grinyuk and I'm Regional Manager for the Central Eastern Europe at the SME Banking Club, and I will be your host today. And each Monday, I am here with John Mark Williams from Agile Business Consortium and Maria Tsenusa from Integrated Consulting Group. So thank you for joining this morning as well.
Nice to see you again, both. Good morning.
Thank you, Elena. Hi.
So before we start, let me mention some quick organizational moments. So our webinar is scheduled for half an hour. The format is panel discussion, so you're welcome to type your questions right now from the start, and please type them into the chat and we will be answering them, I think, at once. And we are recording this webinar, so right after we finish, you will receive a link to the video. Today we continue to discuss the topic of Agile in HR, and we'll focus on learning development and performance management. So if organization is transforming into the Agile way of working, so adoption of these practices is crucial. So how does it differ from the traditional approach and the traditional setting of KPIs? I'm passing the word to John and Maria. Maria, would you start?
Yes, I will first start with like a brief recap of our previous discussions, because I believe they are sort of connected from one to another. So this was actually one of the first slides that we ever introduced, and it was John who introduced this approach for environment for business agility, and we spent quite some time discussing what does it mean to have business agility, and because agile is such a buzzword, everybody likes to drop it here and there to look very cool while being up to date with the latest buzzwords. So therefore, we discussed, we approached the finance, we approached the marketing side, the people. This is part of actually of the agile people, which is actually the foundation of everything. And it goes very well in line with also the manifesto of agile, in which people are very much encouraged. And what we wanted to discuss last time, we were discussing about the traditional management in the agile management and the role of HR in this new world. Because if in the past HR was more like a control function and it's more like an execution support function, less involved in the strategy, right now we see HR's job in implementing programs, and we discussed quite a lot of agile involvement in the business and the role of agile business partner. How is that shaping up in the past years? And I introduced last time a very interesting report from State of Agile. This is the first report that they do it on the HR area, and they just released it, I think, 1 or 2 weeks ago. And it's a survey amongst companies in all continents, all business areas. So it's not only IT, it's also finance, it's also industry, you name it. But HR professionals were asked about the role of HR and how they perceive it in the world of that is changing right now. And without, you can see the majority is seeing the HR role becoming more strategic, is the real business partner that understands the business side of things. And it's not only execution, it's actually driving the content of recruitment, of core learning and development, of everything. So it's building together with business the whole process. So that was basically what was discussed last week. And now I want to continue with something from the same report. It was actually a confirmation of what we have discussed last time, because why would HR start to work agile? Well, actually, because they need to understand better the business and reply better to the business demand. So 70% of the respondents are actually in line with that, which actually proves that the mindset is there, and HR role is actually becoming more and more meaningful, not only just taking and checklisting the practices in Agile that are there to support. So, and of course, being able to support the organization in the Agile transformation is also something very important. But I really like this focus on creating the business values. And this is why HR would promote themselves as being agile. And now the same survey and actually the intro for today, and then I will stop talking and invite also John to share some thoughts. This was the view of the respondents on what were the HR processes that were influenced by Agile. And as you can see, learning and development and performance and feedback are actually the processes that take the biggest toll in their need to change. So we were thinking that we could actually approach this and share our experiences in these two areas. John, what do you think? What do you think about this outcome of the survey?
Very interesting. Thank you very much indeed, Maria. If we go back to the slide just before this one, if we can, first of all, because the thing that comes out of that really strongly for me, and it builds on what we said last week actually, is it's very clear that HR itself understands the need to be strategic, the need to be focused on helping the business fulfill the business need rather than being a separate function. So it does seem to me that one of the reasons why we're talking about this at the moment is that actually that's maybe not a concept that's already deeply accepted everywhere else in the organization. So whilst HR recognizes its strategic function, maybe one of the challenges for people in HR is actually to get the rest of the organization to understand A, that HR recognizes that, and B, actually that HR can provide a strategic contribution. And I think, the reversing the not negative, just generally uninformed view that most parts of an organization have about the HR function will be one of the things that I think HR needs to focus on. And the opportunity we have at the moment, based around the principles of agility, is a huge opportunity for HR because of the demand that organizations have for agility. On the follow-up slide, which shows the learning and development and performance management as the two
I just want to make a comment.
Yeah.
I wanted to make a comment before moving to the next slide on exactly what you said, John. This is a two-way street. So on one side, HR wants to become more meaningful, but on the other side, business also should treat HR as a more meaningful role. And what does it mean exactly? It means that HR needs to understand the value that the business is creating, needs to understand the customers, needs to understand the product. Why do we do that instead of the other one? Why do we approach this market? And this actually requires a period of accommodation in which we don't just take people for granted and everybody does what they are supposed to do, but actually we allocate time to share these things from one side to another. So then HR contribution could be really meaningful, not recruit as per a job description and tick the boxes, but understand why do we need such roles here and there. Because as you pointed out as well, if you want to have a more meaningful HR, it's not this is not the purpose. You actually want to have a more meaningful business. You want to have a business that has agility. So therefore, these new roles that you find in Agile, it's complicated to just put them on a simple checklist and then recruit according to them, because everybody is actually being relatively new. Everybody understands different stuff, so then you need HR to understand what exactly is the core of your need. Beyond that.
Interesting, yeah, because one of the things one of the things that sprang to mind as you were talking, of course, is what something we mentioned last time, which was about language and the need for everybody in the business to speak the same language about the business outcome that we want to try and achieve, and the challenge of HR having a language, finance having a language, operations having a language. One of the things that might emerge here is maybe the language of agility is the common language that could actually feature, that could bring all of the different parts of the organization together. And I think that there's a drive there for the senior leadership team in organizations to try and identify that common language, if it's the language of agility, for example, that enables all of the elements of the business to come together around the same outcome, I think. The other thing that, of course, coming out of what you mentioned was the word customers. And I think traditionally for HR, the customer has not been the end customer of the business. It's either been the leadership team within the organization that wants HR to do something, or it's been the teams within the organization that want certain services from HR. I think this leap into everybody agreeing, actually, there is only one customer that we need to satisfy here, and we need to come together to do that, is something that will be hugely valuable for not just for HR, but obviously for the rest of the business. Just picking up on the last slide, which has learning and development and performance and feedback there as clearly standing out as the two most important processes influenced by HR. We'll talk a bit more about that, I'm sure, in a second. The thing that struck me, though, was that the second two, onboarding and offboarding and recruitment. And I think what is interesting about that is that recruiting people into the organization and familiarizing them with the organization is secondary to the contribution of HR to the people who are already in the organization. And whilst that should sound like something that's perfectly obvious and a no-brainer, actually it's not. And I know a number of HR teams and elements within organizations, large and small, who have seen their role as recruitment and onboarding, not learning and development and performance and feedback. And I think that recognition within HR that L&D and performance management is the most important function, and the others are secondary, although not that far behind, is an important leap in the mindset of the HR teams. I very much like the idea of this idea that money follows talent, so that actually developing people within the organization is the way to create wealth creating or value creating capability within the organization, and developing people who are within it already rather than going outside for that is something that's quite important. So I'll stop there for a moment to just see if you've got any thoughts on that. It's gone very quiet.
Maria, are you with us?
I think Maria's connection might have disappeared. In that case, I shall continue talking, because that's what I'm supposedly good at. So, just picking up on this idea of money following talent. Learning and development is has been a function which has been seen as an add-on for HR for quite a long time now. It's now recognized as something that is integral to the success of the organization. We develop our people because lifelong learning is a requirement, and particularly in agile times, because agility is I have to be careful how I say this, because there's a principle in agility which says we don't learn on the job. We already employ people who know what they're doing, and they are agile in the way that they deliver. However, agility itself is a learning process, and I think, Maria, you had a phrase which said that learning loops are embedded in the agile process. And I think that for me sums up the whole of agility. And I think that's why learning and development is clearly an important function of HR. Now, is that Maria back with us now?
Yes, I'm back.
Great, absolutely great, absolutely great. So
I had a bit of a hiccup with the internet.
Well, that's what the internet does to us, I think, really. So I was just saying that it's clearly it's important that L&D and performance feedback are the most important functions of HR. It's also useful to recognize that the former role of HR, recruitment and onboarding, is still seen as important, even though it's secondary.
Yes, and actually, I really like this observation, because it didn't point out to me. I didn't see it like that at the beginning. I was maybe brainwashed a bit about the agile look on things, and I was like, yeah, obviously agile, I don't know, compensation and benefit, maybe something, recruitment. But indeed, Indeed, the content of the role is actually focusing on what you have rather than constantly seeking outside. And you can see the roles that are the processes that are less influenced are actually the processes that are more on the operational side, the classic HR function, as you mentioned. And I want to pick up on the learning and development part because this is something that the standard HR approach or the standard. I don't know. I've been in a corporation for 18 years, so yeah. I've seen the initial and then the changes. And then the standard is that you have a training catalog, you have an evaluation once or twice a year if you're lucky. And then the evaluation, you have this process in which we decide, okay, what shall we change for next year? Areas of improvement. Oh, and then for the areas of improvement, you go to seek the trainings to fix you, basically. And this is actually a process that is not continuous. As you mentioned as well, John, it's something that happens because we need to do the evaluation, because according to the evaluation, we also see what are the compensation and benefits afterwards. So this is like a mechanical process that is happening. And what the part that Agile brings is the part of continuous learning loops, continuous development loops. And how is that happening? Because, by the way, Agile is organized with this incremental delivery to the customer with mixed teams in which people of all sorts and kinds are put together and given some decision power to work on a product, to launch a product. It's actually critical for the success of that team and for the success of that business that the team is self-adjusting constantly. And how can you do that unless you stop, you assess what you've done, and here is the feedback loop that is kicking in as well. You assess what you've done, and then you say, okay, what can be different? What can I do different next time? And this, if done properly, this is actually like an exercise that is continuous. You don't actually necessarily need the formal evaluation process that you have at the end of the year, because you already know during the year what happened, what went wrong. You always discuss about it openly with the team, and you always try to learn from it. And the best part of it is also, given the fact that you have people from various specialties in the team, yes, so they have different backgrounds. They are not all different, yes, but they still have a bit of different backgrounds. It's also a very nice opportunity, the team being self-organizing, is a very nice opportunity for people who are curious and willing to do more to actually try out new things in a very simple, safe environment, just offering to do something extra besides their job. So just to see how it is, if I like it, I might actually seek to have more information in that area. But I'm trying, and it's more easier, it's more natural environment to do that. What do you think about this one? What do you think?
I think that's fascinating because the basic principles of agility drive us towards openness and transparency and, in a way, sort of vulnerability, because what we're talking about is a continual process of unself-conscious self-assessment. We did this. How did we do? Actually, we did pretty good here. We didn't do very well there. We don't feel like we're a failure because of that. We look at what we did well and what we didn't do well. And then the question that you asked is, how can we do it differently next time? And I think that willingness of an organization and the teams within the organization to be unself-consciously self-assessing all the time can only happen in teams which have that agile mindset. And I think the contribution of HR to this is both to become possessed of that agile mindset themselves, and then to work with the organization on how other parts of the organization adopt that agile mindset. And I know it sounds odd to use the term vulnerability, but actually we talk of lots of things. We talk about psychological safety and authenticity. Actually, that's just allowing ourselves to be wrong without actually feeling awful about it, and then fix the problem, not the blame. So I agree, and I think that iterative process through the course of a year, which says, yeah, we've got a target for this year. We're not going to wait until the end of the year to see whether or not we hit it. We'll do it at the end of every sprint. We'll do it at the end of every stand-up. We'll do it whenever we want. We'll say, how are we doing? How are we doing here? And I actually think one of the most valuable contributions that HR can make is to take that retrospective, and of course there is a formal term within Agile, which is the retrospective. We have a look at how we did. To take that process and turn it into a mindset, not only in HR, but in the rest of the organization. So whether or not we do a formal retrospective is irrelevant. We are, as you suggested, continually assessing how are we doing, how are we doing. Okay, I'll do that differently next time. And if we extrapolate...
I have a comment here with a retrospective, because actually people always say, but we are always checking at the end of a project to see how it went. And actually majority of that is done at the end of the project, and especially if something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And if something goes well, we are celebrating success. But we don't stop to ask ourselves, why did we have a success on this one? Was it us, or was it chance? Is there something I can repeat next time? So people will go into their mental, already mental blocks, and they will say, yeah, but it's no biggie. We always do that. We always do the assessment. But be very aware of the kind of assessment that you do. Assessment when thing goes bad, and then you're like, okay, we want to learn, but it's actually seeking people responsible for that, or the kind of assessment in which you don't do it and you celebrate success. So it's a bit different. And it's a training that you have to do, exactly as you point out.
Well, interesting, because there's I had a long conversations with somebody once about assessments and retrospectives and all this sort of stuff, and I said to them, is it normal for something to be a success if we don't do anything with it? We just set off a process and we don't touch it after that. Will it normally achieve success? And they said, well, no, actually, we have to keep doing stuff, because most stuff will not achieve success if we don't help it. So I said, okay, so in that case, actually, failure is actually normal, because if we do something and we don't touch it afterwards and it fails, that's normal behavior. And he said, yeah, actually, that's right, yeah. And I said, okay, so in that case, a success is a failure that went wrong. So if we turn our head around and look at it that way and say, actually, that's quite an agile way to look at stuff, because we should be looking at success just as much as we look at failure, and probably more so. Yeah, because success is actually unusual and abnormal, and that's why it takes agility very often to make something work. So taking the good for granted is not something we should do, and definitely we should be iterating all the time these retrospectives. One other thing I wanted to mention, actually, and this is a big strategic role for HR, that there's a principle that those organizations which are most successful, and this is really applicable to banks, are not those who do the same as everybody else and do it better. It is those organizations who change the nature of the business that they are in, really innovative organizations. So the role of HR then, if we think about it strategically, goes beyond changing the nature of the training or the development or whatever that people get. It goes beyond changing the nature of the roles within the organization, and it actually starts to say, how can we help the business change the nature of this banking business that we are in? What can HR do that will be so innovative that actually that bank will be completely differentiated from any other bank? And that actually is a very long conversation between HR and the other parts of the bank, and that's a truly strategic agenda for HR, I think. And the application of agile thinking in that is the only way that will actually operate. What do you think?
Indeed. Indeed, it addresses the core, the people development, because once you invest in people, it's actually that is the moment that you have your future is secured, basically. So this is at the basis of everything. I would rather hire somebody that has no experience but a willingness to learn and a drive and curiosity and passion for the work, rather than a person that is already fed up with lots of experience. So because then if you have the right people, you can fly, you can do anything. And making sure that they are in the best position, making sure that they always receive information about their performance as well, and feedback about what they're doing, but in a very safe way, and ensuring this let's say environment in which people can develop and can address the area that they find suit for themselves. It's actually an environment in which you will have performing teams. So this goes hand in hand, and discussing about performance and feedback, the way we measure performance, it has to change as well, because in the past, performance was something that was given, performance measurement KPIs were something that were given more or less by your manager, and that were agreed by on the business line, and then you have the target setting, and then you have the whole budgeting process, which takes 6 months. And then at the end of it, you already have the first, when you manage to have your KPIs in the system, you already have the first actual amounts for the first quarter. And then you see, oh, oops, we have to adjust them again. That is the old system in which, it goes bottom up, top down, and then everybody's happy that we finally finished it. But on the new performance system, and this is actually an experiment that I've done a couple of years ago. We had a discussion with a senior manager, and we were having some KPIs on a business line. And I was thinking that if we really want to believe in the idea of Agile and teams that are seeking for themselves to be better performant, then we should address this to them. And once we define the purpose and everything, I run this experiment of defining their KPIs together with them. And then the way we addressed performance was a bit the other way around. I had my own agenda. I knew exactly what was asked of me. And I also had this agreement with the senior manager that we will not yet push it forward to people, but we will wait to see what would make them proud of themselves at the end of the year if they have achieved it. And this is a different way of saying it, because it addresses how you are involved in delivering results. I'm not telling you what to do. You promise you will deliver something. And what you promise to me, you're actually accountable, is different. And it gets that personal involvement in the end result. And what we had at the end of a couple of hours discussions, we had a variety of KPIs, which was amazing, and which was actually, we followed them up through the year on our wall, and everybody was different people from the team was in charge with updating the numbers, because they felt that that part will contribute and it will have a critical influence on overall of the business. We missed some official ones, and for some official ones, actually, we had a tad higher ambition that it was imposed. It was a very meaningful exercise.
Interesting, and I guess the most recent iteration of KPIs is OKRs, objectives and key results, and there are lots of different definitions of how OKRs should be done. For me, the most important things there, and it fits with what you just said about that rolling KPIs or rolling assessment of KPI performance. I think of OKRs as being short term. So I might have a 3-month objective, and I'll have key results that I'll look at, which indicate whether or not I'm actually making that objective. So with OKRs, the difference is normally, first of all, the timeline. So we don't work on annual KPIs. We look at OKRs that might be 3 months away. They might be actually 6 weeks away, or at the end of a sprint, or whatever it is. We'll trust the people who are delivering to actually put forward the outputs that they can achieve and the outcomes that they can achieve from that. And then this is something I haven't heard many people talk about. When we look at the targets or metrics or forecasts, whatever we call them, for OKRs or KPIs, don't have a number, have a range. So if I often use marathon running, for example, as an example. I don't want to run a 4-hour marathon. I want to run a marathon that's between 3:45 and 4:15. Because nobody can know what's going to happen in the next 3 months during our approach to an OKR. So we have to give ourselves permission, back to your safe environment, actually to undershoot a little bit on the metric and maybe to overshoot as well. So I think, again, back to this idea of HR encouraging people in the organization at every level to think flexibility, because that's just another word for agile. Really interesting, very interesting.
Yes, my question, if I may ask here, because John, you mentioned about self-evaluation previously, and actually this was my question. So how this traditional way of setting of KPIs is different really in this mixed agile team. So who actually should evaluate the contribution of everybody in the team, and how to distinguish maybe here the team's objective or goals, yes, and individual goals.
Maria, I'll let you answer that first, because I've got a couple of very clear things that I wanted to say, but I know your experience is much deeper on this.
Well, I think it's a very deep question, two very deep questions that you asked. How you set the KPIs, what is the context in terms of teams? I think it's the way that team is, your performance within a team is something that is very easily seen and assessed constantly by the team members in the sessions that you do regularly for the retrospective. So basically, I had even had a situation in which I had a constant non-performer in the team, and the team is actually pointing that out very quickly. This is nice about the Agile, because when the team makes a commitment and everybody commits to deliver something, when you fail the team once, twice, couple of times, and the team cannot rely on yourself, then the team's own performance is influenced. So they would seek to have those members of the team identified, and they are addressing the non-performance is addressed way faster than in a regular environment because of these feedback loops from the team. In terms of KPI setting, I have a combination of answers from John and from Olena. I have seen organizations going from KPI to OKRs, because this is more it's the new name of the game. But then forgetting about the long term. And actually, long term, by long term, I don't mean 5 years, I mean even 1 year. And actually, people, product owners, entire teams, and even on the senior level, lacking an insight on a sort of indicative overall roadmap of what we are going to do, what we want to achieve in our strategy for the entire year. And this short-sightedness is not helping the business. It's adding to the chaos, actually. I need to build in my learning, in my team, in my performance, wherever. I need to understand where I should position myself, because I see the greater objective in the year. And from the personal level, you will have a combination of success as a team, and what do I need to improve about myself, and what do I need to promise to my team from my side of the business, that I can contribute in this year. So if I'm a marketer, then it means that I need to upgrade on this and this and this that is marketing related. If I'm a tester, then it means I will have to do this and this and this level of testing, whatever. So you have a combination of mixed and personal objectives, which are given by the specialty that you have, right? What do you think, John?
Yeah, absolutely right. And there are two, in a sense, there are two things going on here. When we talk about self-organizing teams, what we mean is self-managing teams, which also means self-policing teams. And I think the two elements here, how do we identify, how do we forecast what the team will actually be able to produce, and how does the team manage the performance of that? The first thing is, if the team is operating as a team, as a self-organizing, self-policing team, if we call it that, the forecast will be more realistic, because we're encouraging the team members to come up with what actually is realistic, not just as individuals, but therefore for the team as well. And they will have a time attached to them, because these are agile processes. So we know that time, whether it's time boxing or sprints or whatever, is actually a crucial element of this delivery output. So there'll be realistic forecasts, and there'll be a timeline attached to them. In performance terms, we also know that because the team is open and transparent, there is a safe environment in which to be able to say, I can't do this, I'm not delivering this, I need help with this, whatever it is. As a result of which, as you quite rightly said, Maria, underperformance, if we call it that, by any team member is immediately transparent, which means that the performance of the team will either be effective in all respects, or if it's not, the reason why it's not will be immediately evident, and the team, if it's given sufficient autonomy, can actually do something about that. And I've seen teams who have actually said, basically on a democratic basis, actually, we can't have you as a team member anymore. We want somebody else to be delivering this job within the team, because
I had the same, and this is wonderful. Yep. Yes, I had the same. Sorry, I interrupted you. Continue, please.
No, it's great. Yeah. No, and it's, for me, it's in a way, it's the proof that a team is actually self-organizing and self-managing, because the team knows, and this is at the foundation of absolutely everything, it's the team performance that actually determines whether or not this thing works. If this project is successful, because the team did its job, not because some strutting hero did their job better than everybody else. It's all about the team. So whether we call it KPIs or OKRs in terms of performance, or indeed or in terms of forecasting, it's the team that makes the difference. And if teams are not empowered to be self-organizing and self-policing, actually, I don't think agility will be the outcome.
Yeah, they will only show the results that they were expected to, even if they don't believe in them. And I have seen this happening as well. Like, okay, yeah, we'll do that. Sure. No, I don't think it will work. But anyhow, whatever.
Absolutely.
And that is actually moving away from what you want to create as a team. And just as a last add-on to the discussion about performance and feedback, the way you do in Agile, it looks like it's improvised, it looks like it's chaotic, but measurement is crucial for everything in Agile or anywhere else. I cannot know if I'm becoming better unless I stop, I measure, I assess. And then this thing is also done continuously in an Agile team as well. And this is why to have a team that has learned, that has a history together, and a team that you don't change it with every project, every 3 months you change the team, you cannot have this constant upgrade of the team. But once you have a team that learns how to function, the members learn about each other, they have measurement, they have a history of what they can do together. This is actually the basis of assessing an improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Patrick Lencioni, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, with trust as the foundation, and then working its way through that. Yeah, Elena, I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Well, I feel that we can speak on this topic of performance management one more episode, and as we actually should, wrap up. Like, would you summarize very shortly this episode for our attendees?
Oh gosh. Well, I suppose my one message, I guess, really, if we're thinking about learning and development in particular, and performance management in particular, is free the team to be able to deliver the outcome to the best of its ability. Free the team, I think.
Well, so nicely put, indeed, if you have a team with all the roles there that are willing and able to deliver, once they know what they need to deliver and why, just let them, just let them run, because they will do a magic job.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for today. We will be closing today's webinar and see you next Monday, 11 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.